The circus grounds smelled of rust, dust, and despair. Torn banners flapped weakly in the hot wind, their faded paint barely hinting at the glory the Case-Off Brothers Circus once claimed. Children clutched their parents' hands as they shuffled past cages, their faces caught between awe and unease. The animals inside no longer looked like performers. They looked like prisoners. And in the largest cage, crouched against iron bars streaked with rust, lay the lion that had once been the circus's pride. His name was Zamba. Once, his mane had shone golden under the spotlights. Once his roar had shaken tents and thrilled crowds. But tonight, his mane was matted, his ribs pressed sharply against his skin, and his eyes carried only the dull shadow of a fading king. He was too weak to stand for long. Too broken to leap through flaming hoops, too sick to roar with the power of the beast he had once been. The circus owner, Victor Kassoff, had made his decision. The lion was worthless now, no longer a performer, no longer a commodity. The order had been whispered to workers that morning. After the final show, Zamba would be shot. His death would be swift, his body buried behind the tents, and the circus would move on. And yet, on that sweltering evening, something extraordinary happened. When the crowd dispersed, a sound rose from the lion's cage. Not loud, not powerful, but undeniable. Zamba roared. It was not the triumphant roar of a star, nor the ferocious cry of a predator. It was something else entirely, a sound of defiance, of sorrow, and of dignity refusing to die. It echoed through the tents and over the dusty grounds, and for those who heard it, it was unforgettable. Among the listeners stood Ravi Patel, a wildlife veterinarian who had come out of curiosity. He had heard rumors of cruelty in the circus, but nothing could have prepared him for the sight before him, the once majestic lion now reduced to this pitiful state. As Zamba's roar reached his ears, Ravi felt something shift inside him. He didn't yet know it, but in that moment, his life and Zamba's would become forever bound together. The crowd went home. The circus workers muttered about tomorrow's grim task, but Ravi stayed. His eyes followed the lion's weakened body. His ears rang with the echo of that last roar. Somewhere deep in his chest, a voice whispered, "This cannot be the end." The gun had not yet fired. The order had not yet been carried out. And fate, though cruel and unforgiving, was about to be challenged in the most unexpected way. Zamba had not always lived in chains. His story began far away, in the dry grasslands of East Africa, where he was born under a vast golden sky. As a cub, he had wrestled with his siblings in the tall grass, learning the ways of the wild under the careful watch of his mother. But his freedom had been short-lived. One night, men came with torches and rifles. They scattered the pride, killed the older lions, and captured the cubs. Zamba had been shoved into a wooden crate and sold like cargo. By the time he arrived in India, his life in the wild was already a memory slipping into myth. The circus had renamed him Zamba the Magnificent. For years, he was the centerpiece of the Case-Off Brothers' empire. Children gasped when he leapt through flaming hoops. Men cheered when he balanced on barrels. Women covered their eyes when he swiped at his trainer with a rehearsed growl. Zamba had been more than an animal. He was a spectacle, a living crown jewel, but every spectacle has a cost. Behind the curtains, Zamba's life was one of pain and punishment. He was whipped when he disobeyed, starved when he resisted, and drugged when he refused to perform. His cage was barely large enough for him to pace 3 steps in either direction. The iron floor was cold in the winter, searing in the summer. Each day blurred into the next, a routine of confinement and humiliation. As the years passed, Zamba's body weakened. The once powerful lion grew thin, his muscles wasting from malnutrition and neglect. His roars became softer, his spirit dimmer. Crowds began to murmur that the great lion had lost his edge. Ticket sales dipped. Victor Kassoff, always chasing profit, replaced Zamba with younger, healthier animals. Soon, the star of the circus was reduced to a background act, a shadow of his former glory. And then came the final humiliation. During a performance, Zamba stumbled as he tried to leap through the hoop of fire. He crashed against the ring, his mane briefly catching flame before trainers doused him with water. The crowd gasped. Some children cried. Viktor Kasov seethed. "He's finished," he spat. That night, the decision was made. Zamba had been sentenced. The workers whispered about it in the back tents. Some pitied the old lion. Most did not care. For them, animals were tools, and tools were discarded when broken. The order was clear. After the last show of the week, Zamba would be shot, but Zamba, though weak, still had one thing left: his dignity. And it was that dignity which roared out of his chest the night Ravi Patel stood by his cage. Ravi had grown up admiring animals, not exploiting them. He had dedicated his life to healing, patching up injured elephants hit by trains, tending to leopards poisoned by villagers, rehabilitating owls rescued from smugglers. But nothing in his years of work had prepared him for the sight of Zamba's wasted body. His training told him that the lion's condition was critical, perhaps irreversible. His heart told him that no creature deserved to die like this. That night Ravi went home restless. He tossed in his bed, haunted by the echo of Zamba's roar. Again and again the question returned: what can I do? By morning he knew the answer. He had to return. He had to try. The following evening, Ravi walked back into the circus grounds. The atmosphere was strangely festive. Crowds cheered for clowns and acrobats, unaware of the execution order hanging in the air. Behind the curtain, workers whispered about the lion's fate. A rifle leaned against a chair, its barrel polished, its bullets already loaded. Zamba lay slumped in his cage. His breath was shallow, his eyes half closed. Yet when he saw Ravi approach, something flickered, recognition, or perhaps a faint curiosity. Ravi stepped closer, ignoring the trainer's glare. He spoke softly, more to himself than to the lion. "Not yet," he whispered. "Not like this." Then came the announcement. Viktor Kasov strode into the ring, his voice booming with authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, you have just witnessed the show of the century. Tomorrow we prepare for our next destination. But tonight we honor a legacy, the great lion Zamba, who gave us his best years." The crowd clapped politely, not understanding what he meant. But Ravi understood. His chest tightened. As the circus emptied, workers gathered around Zamba's cage. One man lifted the rifle. The others muttered about getting it over with quickly. The lion stirred, sensing the shift in energy. His ears twitched. His tail flicked weakly. Ravi couldn't stay silent. He stepped forward, his voice steady but urgent. "Stop!" The workers froze. Viktor scowled. "Who are you?" "My name is Ravi Patel. I'm a veterinarian," he said. His eyes burned with conviction. "You can't do this," Viktor sneered. "The animal's finished. He's worthless. You want him? Pay me." The worker with the rifle raised it slightly. The air grew tense. Ravi's heart pounded, but he stood his ground. "If you want to shoot him," Ravi said, his voice rising, "you'll have to shoot me first." The words hung heavy in the air. The workers exchanged glances. Even Viktor faltered for a moment, surprised by the stranger's defiance. Ravi pressed on. "This lion has suffered enough. He deserves a chance to live out his days in dignity. Not like this. Not as a spectacle, not as a corpse behind your tent." Viktor's eyes narrowed. "And what do you propose, Doctor?" "I'll take him," Ravi said firmly. "Release him to me." A laugh rippled through the workers. "You take a lion?" One sneered, but Ravi didn't flinch. He met Viktor's gaze without blinking. "Name your price." Viktor Kasov's smirk spread slowly, like a snake coiling to strike. He'd spent decades squeezing money from animals and people alike, and here was a man, naive, desperate, emotional, practically begging to be exploited. "You want the lion?" Viktor said, stroking his beard with mock contemplation. "He's not cheap. He's the last of his line, imported all the way from Africa. A magnificent beast. A magnificent beast you were about to shoot," Ravi replied. The workers chuckled, but Viktor only leaned closer to the cage, tapping the bars with his cane. "Business is business." "What's his life worth to you?" Ravi hesitated. He was not a wealthy man. His salary as a government veterinarian barely covered his living expenses. But he also knew this moment would never come again. "Tell me the price," he said finally. Viktor grinned. 5 lakh rupees. The workers gasped. 5 lakh, 500,000, was outrageous. More than enough to buy 3 younger lions from smugglers. Victor knew it. He was daring Ravi to back down, to admit defeat, but Ravi's jaw tightened. He thought of the roar that had pierced his heart, the broken animal that had stared at him with fading eyes. "Done," he said. Victor blinked. For once, the ringmaster was caught off guard. "You have that kind of money?" "No," Ravi admitted. "But I'll get it." The men laughed. Victor waved his hand dismissively. "Empty words. Come back with cash, doctor. Until then, the order stands." Ravi's pulse quickened. He had no time to lose. He hurried home, emptied his savings, borrowed from friends, and even mortgaged his late father's farmland. By dawn, he had scraped together just enough. With trembling hands, he carried a battered leather bag filled with bundles of rupees back to the circus grounds. The workers stared in disbelief as Victor counted the notes one by one, his greedy fingers relishing each crumpled bill. When the last bundle was stacked on the table, Victor looked up. "He's yours," he said with a cruel smile. "Take your lion and go, but if he dies tomorrow, don't come crying back." Ravi ignored the taunt. He turned to Zamba, who lay in the cage watching the exchange. For the first time, Ravi thought he saw a glimmer of life return to those weary eyes. The sun was just rising when the workers dragged Zamba's cage out of the tent. The iron bars screeched against the dirt, the wheels wobbling unevenly. Zamba stirred, his breath ragged. Ravi walked beside the cage, whispering softly, as if his words could ease the lion's suffering. "You're safe now," he said. "I promise you're safe." The circus workers offered no help beyond their contract. Once the cage was loaded onto a rickety truck, they dusted their hands and walked away. Ravi climbed onto the truck bed, sitting close to the lion. The driver, a thin man with tired eyes, muttered, "Dr. Saib, are you sure about this?" "He looks like he won't make it to the next town." Ravi stroked the bars gently. "He has to make it. He deserves to." The journey was perilous. The truck rattled over potholes, each jolt making Zamba groan. At one point, the lion slumped so low that Ravi panicked, fumbling to check his breathing. Still alive. Barely. Ravi pressed a damp cloth to his mouth, trying to ease the dryness of his throat. Hours passed. Heat shimmered off the road. Ravi offered water through a metal bowl, watching anxiously as Zamba's cracked tongue flicked at the liquid. The act was small, but to Ravi it was victory, but danger still lingered. At a checkpoint outside the city, a police officer flagged down the truck. His eyes narrowed as he peered into the cage. "Permit?" he demanded. Ravi's stomach clenched. He had no official paperwork, only Victor's handwritten bill of sale. The officer examined it, then smirked. "This is not valid. You can't transport a wild animal without clearance." Ravi's mind raced. If the authorities seized Zamba, he would be lost forever, perhaps sold again or worse. He stepped closer to the officer, lowering his voice. "Please, this animal has been sentenced to death. I've saved him with my own money. He's barely alive. If you delay us, he won't survive the night." The officer studied him. His expression was unreadable. Then with a sigh, he waved them through. "Go, but if anyone asks, I never saw you." Relief washed over Ravi. The truck rolled on. By nightfall they reached the sanctuary gates, a small, underfunded facility where Ravi often volunteered. The staff rushed to help, eyes widening at the sight of the half-dead lion. Together, they wheeled the cage into the infirmary, where the smell of antiseptic replaced the stench of the circus. "Dear God," murmured Dr. Lakshmi Reddy, the sanctuary's chief veterinarian. "What have they done to him?" "Everything," Ravi replied grimly. "And worse." The team worked through the night. They sedated Zamba carefully, treating infected wounds, rehydrating his frail body, trimming his matted mane. Every so often Ravi's heart lurched as the monitors dipped dangerously low. But by dawn, against all odds, Zamba still lived. Exhausted, Ravi sank into a chair beside the cage. He watched the lion's chest rise and fall, each breath a fragile miracle. For the first time since hearing that haunting roar, Ravi allowed himself a smile. "You're not done yet," he whispered. "Not while I'm here." The sanctuary was a world away from the chaos of the circus. Here, birds sang in tall neem trees, the air smelled of grass instead of smoke, and cages were not prisons, but temporary shelters for healing. Yet even in this place of refuge, Zamba's arrival sent a ripple of unease through the staff. The lion was a wreck. His body bore scars of years of abuse, burns along his flank, whip marks across his shoulders, cracked paws from pacing endlessly on iron floors. His teeth were worn down, some missing entirely, and his eyes, though faintly alert, carried the fog of exhaustion. Dr. Lakshmi Reddy, a stern woman with streaks of silver in her hair, led the examination. "Malnutrition, severe dehydration, advanced muscle atrophy," she muttered, taking notes rapidly. She paused at the lion's ribs, which jutted out like jagged peaks. "If he survives the week, it will be a miracle." Ravi stood nearby, refusing to sit. His shirt was still dust-stained from the journey, but his eyes never left the lion. "He will survive," he said quietly. Dr. Reddy shot him a sharp look. "Hope is not medicine, Patel. His chances are slim. We must be realistic." "I know," Ravi admitted. "But he has fought this long. He deserves every chance we can give him." And so the work began. Day and night, Ravi stayed by Zamba's side. He cleaned wounds, monitored fluids, whispered encouragement through the bars. At first, the lion barely stirred, trapped in a twilight between life and death. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, signs of life returned. His ears twitched at the sound of voices. His tail flicked when touched. His nostrils flared at the scent of fresh meat. One evening, as Ravi leaned close, Zamba opened his eyes fully. For the first time, those amber orbs met his gaze with startling clarity. It was not trust yet, not even recognition, but it was something more than emptiness. It was survival. Ravi felt a lump rise in his throat. "That's it," he whispered. "Stay with me. Fight." The days stretched into weeks. Each small victory, a steady heartbeat, a few bites of food, the first attempt to stand, felt monumental. The staff, once doubtful, began to whisper about the bond forming between man and beast. Wherever Ravi went, Zamba's eyes followed. But with survival came questions. How had the circus been allowed to reduce a wild king to such misery? And why had no one stopped them? The answers would soon come, darker than Ravi had imagined. One morning, while examining Zamba's blood tests, Dr. Reddy frowned. "This can't be right," she murmured. "Look at these chemical traces." Ravi leaned over. The results showed unusual compounds in the lion's system. Sedatives, steroids, even traces of tranquilizers not licensed in the country. "They drugged him," Ravi said bitterly, "to keep him performing, to keep him submissive. But the more they investigated, the worse it became. Old medical files from the circus, smuggled out by a sympathetic worker, revealed a pattern of abuse, starvation diets to keep animals thin, injections of stimulants before shows, brutal punishments for disobedience. Zamba had been their greatest victim, his declining health hidden beneath layers of chemicals and lies. Dr. Reddy contacted the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau. Within days, officers arrived at the sanctuary, their presence sharp and official. They took statements, photographed injuries, and seized the circus records. One officer, a tall man named Inspector Prakash, spoke gravely to Ravi. "You understand what you've done, Patel. By removing this lion, you've exposed a network bigger than just one circus. There are dozens like it. Smuggling, illegal drugs, black market animal sales." Ravi swallowed. "Then expose them all. Let this be the start." But the revelations hit closer to Zamba than anyone expected. Through confiscated documents, investigators discovered that Zamba had not been bred in captivity, as the circus claimed. He had been stolen directly from the wild as a cub, ripped from his pride in Africa, and trafficked through secret routes to India. His entire life had been built on lies and chains. When Ravi heard this, he sat in stunned silence by Zamba's enclosure. He imagined the young cub in the tall grass, his mother's protective body shielding him, his future unbound. And then he imagined the night of fire and rifles, the crate slamming shut, the freedom stolen forever. His hand pressed against the bars. "I can't give you back the wild," he whispered. but I can give you something better than this. I promise you that. Inspector Prakash's investigation spread like wildfire. The Kasov brothers' circus was fined heavily, their animals confiscated, their reputation ruined. But Victor himself vanished, slipping into the shadows with his fortune. The system had been shaken, not dismantled. Still, for Ravi, victory was not in courtrooms or headlines. Victory was in the steady rise of Zamba's chest, the strength returning to his legs, the spark flickering brighter in his eyes. The war was far from over, but for one lion the tide had turned. Weeks turned into months. At first, progress came like drops of water from a stubborn tap. Slow, uneven, frustrating. But slowly, steadily, Zamba changed. His frame filled out as muscle returned to wasted limbs. His mane grew thicker, darker, no longer a matted reminder of shame, but a crown beginning to resemble its former glory. He still carried scars, both seen and unseen. Loud noises made him flinch. The sight of whips or sticks sent him pacing, eyes darting wildly. But in Ravi's presence, he grew calmer. Every morning, Ravi walked into the enclosure with measured steps, speaking in the same low, steady tone. "Good morning, Zamba. Another day, another fight." He would set down food and carefully balanced meals of meat, vitamins and supplements, and sit quietly nearby, not forcing, not demanding, simply existing. At first, Zamba ignored him. Then, one morning, the lion lifted his head, chewed thoughtfully, and let out a soft rumble. Not the roar of dominance, but the sound of acknowledgement. Ravi froze, heart pounding. He had been accepted, if only a little. From then on, the bond grew. Ravi began brushing his mane, treating his skin, even stroking his massive shoulders through the bars. Zamba's eyes, once dulled with despair, began to glow with recognition. When Ravi entered, the lion would rise, his body no longer a crumbling ruin, but a survivor's. Staff members whispered about the connection. "It's as if he knows Patel saved him," one said. Another added, "That lion looks at him like family." One evening, a storm rolled over the sanctuary. Thunder cracked, lightning split the sky. Animals panicked in their shelters. Zamba began pacing, eyes wide, memories of circus chaos flashing in his mind. Ravi rushed to the enclosure. "It's all right," he called, standing tall though rain drenched his clothes. "You're not there anymore. You're safe." The lion roared, not in anger but in fear. For a moment, Ravi wondered if the fragile trust would shatter. Instead, Zamba stepped toward the bars, pressed his great head against them, and let out a low, trembling growl. Ravi placed his palm on the bars, leaning close. "I've got you," he whispered. From that night forward, the bond was unbreakable. Man and lion, survivor and savior, had found each other. The years that followed reshaped everything. Ravi used his own funds, donations, and eventually government grants to expand the sanctuary. What had once been a modest refuge grew into a rehabilitation center dedicated to animals rescued from circuses, traffickers, and private collectors. At the heart of it all was Zamba. He never returned to the wild. Captivity had robbed him of that chance. But he became something perhaps even greater, a living ambassador for the voiceless. Children visited the sanctuary and stood in awe before his enclosure, not to see a trick or a spectacle, but to witness dignity restored. Ravi would tell his story of cruelty and survival, of despair and defiance, and the children would leave with eyes wide, their hearts changed. News outlets picked up the story. "The lion who escaped death," they called him. Ravi never cared for the headlines. What mattered was the truth. One life, saved against impossible odds, could ripple outward and change countless others. On the anniversary of Zamba's rescue, the sanctuary held a small gathering. Volunteers, staff, and visitors gathered near his enclosure. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in crimson and gold. Ravi stood at the front, his hand resting lightly on the bars. "This lion was sentenced to death," he said, his voice steady. But he roared one last time. And in that roar, I heard something I couldn't ignore. That roar changed both our lives. It reminded me that fate is not fixed. It can be challenged. It can be defied. As if on cue, Zamba lifted his head. His chest swelled, and from deep within came a roar, not weak, not broken, but full, thunderous, commanding. It echoed across the sanctuary, through the trees, into the hearts of everyone who heard it. Children gasped. Adults wiped their eyes. Ravi closed his, letting the sound wash over him. It was not the roar of a circus slave, nor the roar of a dying animal. It was the roar of a king, battered, scarred, but unbroken, and as it faded into the twilight, Ravi knew one truth with absolute certainty. Sometimes to defy fate, all it takes is to listen to the roar of a dying king, and to answer it with courage.